So we were talking about positive biases and negative biases. We want to delve more deeper into negative biases because they are problematic, right? So I want to understand more from you all. What are the reasons or causes for these negative biases which people develop? For instance, gender bias, right? Very common, right? Like whether we accept it or not, very few CEOs are still there, right? We are talking about diversity, women empowerment, but actually you walk into any office, you will only see men initially, right? Very few women. That's a fact, right? Those organizations are putting a lot of effort. So it's not that organizations are having problems. Actually, society at large has to understand these things have to change, right? We have to, empower everybody in the community at large. So help us understand what kind of cultural conditioning, social conditioning, or what kind of upbringing problems are actually creating issues for people who walk into the industry and then create problems related to biases. If you have any examples or if you have any illustrations to share, that would be interesting.
I'm sure you can as well. We can just go on and on this topic, I'm sure, but
Sure.
why don't you guys start?
We want to know, we want to know actually. It's important, yeah.
No, I think it just definitely starts on very early in life, right? And specifically when you are sort of, your core beliefs start building very early in life as you see things happening around you. And I would actually differ with you because logic is actually not the answer to bias. Because you always create logic with what you think is right. And you always can pull in data.
Self-serving bias.
Yeah, you always pull in data to really acknowledge and make decisions. Like she said, in 4 seconds I could, because really she thought she's following a very logical process. She didn't think that she was logical at all, right? So I think you have to sort of really, I mean, many examples, since you asked examples of the biases I've seen, enough and more of them. Oftentimes, award ceremonies are given. Who brings the trophy on the stage in the tray? Why is it a woman? My meeting is going on and people are looking for food. Who typically gets looked at in the room, whatever be their role? Why is it a woman? Right? You are thinking of nominating someone into a program, and it actually happened with me, and I had a manager, great leader, I had a lot of respect for, very supportive of gender diversity, because people typically think, these are leaders who do not support women in the workforce and do not support their growth. Actually exceedingly supportive. And I had a massive high performer in his team, and the high performer came one day to me, and she just was coming back after maternity break saying, I think I don't want to be in this team, and I think I'm getting discriminated against. And I was very surprised. I said, why are you saying that? What's the reason? She said, this IIM Calcutta program happened, which was a residential program, and before my maternity, I was one of the top performers, but I haven't been nominated for it. And he didn't nominate me, but he nominated the others who are men. So I had a chat with this guy, and he said, you know what, she's just had a baby, she's breastfeeding. And I didn't think it would be right for her to leave and go to the IIM Calcutta program. Of course, she's my number one person. But he assumed a very significant paternalistic role without asking for choice and made a very strong assumption. Now, would you say he is wrong, he was bad? Is there a judgment? It was just unconscious. What he applied, what he grew up with. So I think a lot of it is about what you grow up with. I think till the time you change role models, till the time you bring consciousness, till the time you challenge people, there are enough number of people who start debate on everything is not about DEI and gender. And there are enough women who hate to be called the gender nomination into a process. Recently, there was I think a CNBC TV 18. I actually put it on LinkedIn. Change makers of India for the last 10 years. Every single photo is of a man. We're actually saying CNBC TV 18, along with Ernst & Young, has put up a whole page that has only men as last 10 years change makers of India. And when you tell stories like that, they tell a story. And if you don't come and acknowledge and you talk about it, it tells a story. I mean, 4 of you have come from XLRI, all 4 of you are men. Where are the professors who are women?
No, I have an answer to that, but your point is very interesting.
Yeah, so I think it is, I think one has to keep bringing the dialogue forward. There is always an answer. What I'm trying to say, there's always a reason.
Correct, correct.
There's always an answer.
Your point makes a lot of sense.
One has to go in with real, first of all, acknowledgement that it could be existing. Understand it, because in the case of this gentleman, he had only the right intent. And I'm not saying anybody has wrong intent. It is just unconsciously something built in. So unless you build metrics, data, conversation, it will not go away. And unless the role models at home changes.
So what can be the possible reasons that, if it is about gender bias, right, why we carry such biases, or if it is about, for instance, tier 2 boys, tier 2 girls, tier 1 boys, tier 1 girls, this is also kind of a bias we carry, right? People from rural sector, people from urban sector. Why do we develop these biases? What can be the possible reason? Actually, that is more interesting to understand.
So, in my mind, it's a very deeply ingrained, it's deep learning that we have had right from our childhood, right? At home, in schools, like at home, parents decide things many a times, influence things, right? They decide, oh, Nani, this person is not good in sports, whereas my second son is better in sports. Now, how do you know? Many a times it's just the impression that the parents form. You come to school, teachers form similar opinions, right? So right from your childhood, I believe we grow in an ecosystem where we see bias all around it. And it is very unconscious bias, and that gets into each of us as well, right? So for example, if you've heard your parents, I'm not trying to point to any society, particular society here, but if you see your parents or your neighbors trying to alienate a girl child and provide the opportunity to the son, or when you're growing up, if you find different, the way boys and girls differentiated, now these are things that stay with you, right? And at that point, you don't see it as a wrong, because it's being done at home, it's being done in your society, it's being done in the school. So you don't really define it as something that's wrong, right? And those are the behaviors, I believe, that manifest when you get into an adult scenario as well. So that's why I said it has to start with a consciousness, awareness, and a lot of unlearning and relearning, as we talked. The second part of it is, if you were to apply a framework to this, I would think something like, Dan and Chris Heath's, the rider, the elephant path, framework, where one part is understanding the data. When I say data, understanding the whys of it before you actually start solving, then looking at the emotions that go behind it, right? And the third one is the path, which is your process, creating the ecosystem. In a corporate, we cannot underestimate the political environment in a corporate, obviously, right? Yeah. Are we factoring those in? For example, I'm not a great fan of, let's say, the typical Women's Day celebration, where you end up with a rose and a packet of sweets, right? I'm just not that's not my definition of it. And I push my team to say, what have you been doing the whole year? Why do we have to distribute chocolates and roses on Women's Day, right? And honestly, to be absolutely candid, I haven't been able to crack the code either, right? So I'm okay not to celebrate a Women's Day, but do something meaningful through the year. And what do you mean by meaningful? Do you have a structured program by which you are identifying high potential talent and developing them? If you want to create women leaders, right? Women leaders won't happen overnight. You have to have a path to the whole process, right?
Long, hard process.
Long, hard process. Now, organizations want to have a target to say, we want, currently our diversity ratio is 25. First of all, the concept of diversity ratio by gender alone, I think that's absolutely obnoxious. But even if you go by that, today it's 25, we want to take it to 35 in 3 years or 5 years. That's it. What are you doing about it, right? There has to be a path and a program behind that. I think that's where we lack it. So if it's a framework, I would recommend something like the rider elephant path kind of a framework, and a deeper focus on execution.
Soma, you want to add something on it?
Yeah, many thoughts in my mind right now. But I'll just go back to the question you asked, right? Why do biases occur? And I think the reason for that is either fear or pressure to succeed, right? In a corporate sector where you have to publish results every quarter, you want to bank on people or you want to bank on ideas that have worked in the past so that either you will succeed or nobody can blame you for going with the right historically proven fact, right? Somebody told me this, that no one ever got fired for hiring one of the big four consulting companies, right? So you go hire one of the big four, you want a strategic change, you hire one of them, that's also a bias. That a big name like a big four can only come in and change your strategy. And if you are in charge of that strategic transformation process, you've hired McKinsey and the 2 years down the line, they've taken millions of dollars and it didn't work, even then nobody can blame you because you did something that was historically proven as a fact. Similarly, we, like you said, we don't have enough examples of women leaders. So how do I know that a woman will succeed? Let me go with the easier bet or the more historically successful bet, which is, what is it, a man called John, right? There are more men called John who are CEOs than there are women. That's the statistic that comes out. So I think it's about, for example, you see a lot of CEO changes will happen and the CEO will typically bring in their C-suite from their past, either within the company or outside the company. It's about trust, that these people I trust and the people like me I trust more. And therefore, it takes a very, very highly astute and growth mindset oriented person to go in and say, let me challenge my beliefs. Because it is a challenge. It is a bet you're taking on something which has not been done before by bringing in either a non-English speaking person into your team, right? Because all of us are like, the better English you speak, the more polished you are. That means you're smarter because you're communicating better. But like you said, like tier 1, tier 2, banking on those guys, banking on women. And gender bias can actually happen many ways. In one of my companies, which I was a BPO company, most of the weekend shifts or night shifts would be given to single boys. And they came and said, well, we don't have lives.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
the assumption was that married men can't do it, they have family, women can't do it because they have probably family. So, biases tend both ways. And the thing is to question, that somebody has to show you the mirror when you question yourself and say, how is this okay? Why am I not considering this human being as a complete human being versus just that, okay, he's a single and a boy. And this is a woman and a mother.
Absolutely. I mean, having been in a dual career, I have seen a place where if I stay at home, my bosses and office understood. If my husband has to leave early, babysitting ही करना है क्या तुमको केवल?
Yeah.
People do not understand. It's hard. It's hard to. So I think it is absolutely great. Great point there. But I think I'll say one point on your metric, right? I mean, a classic case is when Companies Act came, and there was a forced one director on every board being a woman, yeah, and an independent director. And today it is trending to a place where a whole lot of companies have gone beyond that. And board efficiency and effectiveness has increased and demands have increased. Yeah. So I do think metrics and setting up a goal does play a role because it provides a little bit of a push of a momentum to get a critical mass going.
Picking on what Soma said, I think, what for a technology company, just shifting from gender. So from a technology company, innovation is key, and one of the drivers. And like you said, that we have to create a psychologically safe environment so that you can explore all the options before you come to a decision, right? Because by virtue of the fact that you have so many biases that you are sort of really fighting against, from a technical solution standpoint also, it hampers the decision making process. So therefore, creating that psychologically safe environment for teams to operate and for people to really explore all the things really requires a different kind of a leader or a person who can allow mistakes to happen, let people do things and then sort of explore all the alternatives and then come to a solution. And the second point that I would like to make is that perhaps, overall, culturally, I'm just looking at a very macro level. So if I were to look at myself, while I was growing up, we were really quite confused in terms of our roots, because brought up in a, studied in a convent school and then go across. So you did not want to look at your Indianness, But today, I think, all of us and the younger generation are really embracing who we are. We can go, and from that, emanates a lot of authenticity, and also positive biases towards, simple things which we were taught, like, have a bias towards, being respectful towards the elderly, right? I mean, I will not, I will hesitate to call a man, who's elder to me any other way than, dada, or something else, which is steeped into our history, and which might be really a very positive bias for us to really, inculcate and culturally sort of really embrace who we are. I think, and therefore the other element of authenticity in terms of really challenging our thought process, but being authentic. And coming from Delhi, I find Bangalore really to be a place where, people are very simple, So he might be really, because it is about your self-worth. It is not about the Rado you're wearing, or, it's not about your Mercedes. And therefore, it is a huge change or a shift, in terms of how you think and look at people. So I think that is another element which I would like to bring about in the discussion.
It's a very interesting point. Like, if a person is picking up the values of his culture and using those values as biases, obviously it's going to help people at large,
Absolutely.
right? So, interesting point.
And not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So, when I say values, I mean the culture. If a culture is valuing a few things, obviously there is something positive about it. If it is in contest with a diverse society, or if it is at a larger, if you look at it at a if you give a larger view to it, or if you try to understand it as a big picture, if it is in conflict with other values, obviously you will have to give up on them, right? So I completely agree with that.
I think the evaluation is very important in
yes.
the context of life as it is happening today. So sometimes I look at the 80s Bollywood movies, and I used to love those movies growing up. And now I hate them. I cannot understand how we could be okay with the misogyny. But I am not going to write bad reviews or call names to the directors and the actors and the actresses, because in that context it was okay. For what they knew, it was fine what they did. If they make it again, which some of them are actually making it, now I will speak up against the ones which are being made today. So I think we should also, and I think you said that let's not judge people from where we have come from, because we have all grown up. As long as you're opening up the windows of your mind, and I'm going to the Johari window framework, right? The more you can expand the known, and the more you can reduce the unknown about yourself, that's the best thing you can do about opening up those and being aware of the biases you have.
But over there, that acceptance is important.
Exactly.
First of all, I have to be rooted here for me to really open my window. And from that perspective, that acceptance is what I was talking about.
Absolutely right. Completely.
So once I accept who I am, it doesn't make a difference to me whether it's America or it's a ABC or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But just throwing a contrary point to what you said, this whole thing of respecting age, what it does, as a younger person, respecting age is good. But what it does to the older people, we start believing that I know best. That what has worked for me till now is how I will run this family, how I will run this department. I think that reverse thing happens as well. And my son and I have this conversation all the time. Like, he'll say something and I'll come at it almost with a sense of to him it feels like condensation. For me, it's just parental guidance. He'll say, you're always snubbing me. You're assuming I don't know enough because I'm younger. And that's also a bias, age bias, right?
Or you're old enough to not know anything.
Yeah. Or that
Or
you're
not
prefrontal
be
cortex.
technologically savvy or agile enough because you're older, right? I mean, there's a lot of connotation these days on everything.
You
And
make
how
a
you-
great point. I'll give you a quick example, very similar to what you said. We are taught from childhood not to talk back, not to challenge people who are older to you, right? And historically, so I was talking to a fairly young guy, and he said probably that was because back in the day, the older you are, the more traveled you are, the more wiser you are, therefore you're supposed to respect. He said, at the age of whatever 28, 30, I've traveled across the globe, implementing projects. I've traveled way more than my grandfather. I will not be disrespectful to him, but the context that the fact that I'm expected to respect only for the age, that's not reasonable. That's what the person challenged me, right? And think about it, that's true. In many ways, he probably is more wiser having traveled so much. So the question is, again, not to get judgmental. I think it's important that we step back, examine some of these before we can, pass verdicts, right?
So what I understood from what Mr. Aparnesh said was, giving respect means even if I have a disagreement with you, I need to disagree with respect. That is what is our culture, right? Even I know that the person actually is talking nonsense, but I know that here there is no point disregarding or disrespecting. I know how to do what I want to do, right? So I guess those positive things, if we carry, that helps actually. Even in organizations, lots of fights happen because you know the other person is right and the other person thinks the same about you, right? And we keep fighting. But if we know what we are doing rightly and we know how to disagree respectfully, I guess we are friends also and we are doing work also.
That's a good situation. But there are biases where, the other person doesn't care whether I'm right or wrong. I'm older to you, so I expect that you will follow what I'm saying. And this can very well happen in a corporate scenario also, right?
But sir, why should I give out my value system? Because you are not a right person. I will be respectful to you. If you don't consider me, it's okay, it's your choice, right?
Yeah, I think respect without qualification of an older, younger generation is what will make inclusivity happen. You're right about that.
Another dimension is also about that we hold on to our sort of stands, and that leads also from an organization standpoint. It's basically a sunk fallacy kind of a situation, because you have to cut your losses, but the fact that you've already invested so much of money, you want to go with the idea, you want to make it work somehow, right? You don't want to cut your losses. And similarly, I think that sunk fallacy bias really also sort of affects us personally in our daily lives as well.